Before we get this recap on the way, have you ever been in a coma? You can share your story with us in the comment section. It so happens that in the fall of the year 2000, a young boy just 17 years of age got hit by a bus and fell into a coma for 17 years. Now, he has woken up to find out he is an uncle to a weirdo named Takafumi. Uncle seems to be insane because he claims he spent the last 17 years in another world. Personally, I think he might need to spend more time in this hospital because this madness is uncanny. Looks like a pretty good day to me, and we can see our weirdo. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure if the protagonist is the weird boy or his weird uncle, but if there is one thing we know for sure, it's that the protagonist of this show is weird. We see our weirdo go to pay his uncle a visit at the hospital, and he catches the man murmuring some incoherent rubbish. Takafumi is a bit distraught because he thinks this man has went mad, and he's not far from the truth because, as the sweet nurse also walks in to check Uncle Weirdo's temperature, he also mutters incoherent crap. The funniest thing was the confidence he used to say these rubbish. Turns out, the uncle does recognize Takafumi as his sister's son and tells him he has grown a bit. Uncle Weirdo questions about the family, and Takafumi tells him that when he fell into a coma, the family fought over what to do with him until the family fell apart, and his mum would rather not see him. Just then, Uncle Weirdo scribbles something in a book and says another incoherent rubbish. Okay, at this point, I began asking why they had not brought a rope to tie this guy down. He tells Takafumi that he wants to prove to him that he has been in another world, but Takafumi figures this is probably just a routine display of madness and tells him not to bother. But Uncle insists and then chants things that seem like spells. He chants and chants, but nothing seems to happen. Just when Takafumi was about to give this man a harsh dose of reality, Uncle chants the spell in Japanese, and suddenly the clip and bottle of water flew in the air. This dude had split my brain in two and even destroyed Takafumi's. Takafumi is so surprised, and Uncle tells him it's magic. Takafumi wants to see more, and Uncle brings out fire from his finger. Just then, Uncle asks about the Sega company and if they are still releasing games. Just back the flip up, Sega? Children of this generation won't even know what that is. Takafumi tells him that Sega has long since stopped creating video games, and this broke Uncle's heart so much that he chants a spell, Icarus Quora. Takafumi questions what the spell is for, and Uncle tells him it is a spell used to wipe specific memories from his head. I knew he was hurt by the Sega thing, but was he that hurt? A week later, Uncle was discharged from the hospital, and he and Takafumi decided to open a YouTube channel where they made 60,000 yen from ads. One day after shopping, they return home, and Takafumi realizes that Uncle is an actual illiterate, or maybe just cause a lot of things available now were not available 17 years ago. Takafumi asks Uncle about what his friends were like in the other world, and Uncle tells him he basically played solo for 17 years. This guy. Now another fun fact, which I'm guessing you guys already have figured out. Uncle is ugly. Like, extremely ugly, should be top 5 in my list of ugliest anime characters. And the funny thing is that he was kinda aware of this fact. He mentions that everyone in the other world was so good looking that when they laid eyes on him, they hunted him down as an orc variant. Can you imagine? Uncle tells us he was verbally abused, but Takafumi doesn't want to listen to this story while washing the dishes. Uncle doesn't hear at all because he continues talking about how ugly people in that world perceived him to be. He mentions that he had a tough time there. He met this girl who he saved, but she always called him ugly. But now that he is back, he is going to enjoy this world that has internet, YouTube, and Wi-Fi. Just then, he logs into his YouTube channel just to find out they are trolling him. He doesn't know that people of this generation are savages. Luckily for him, he didn't go anywhere near Twitter because if he did, Uncle from another world would run back to the other world. He tells Takafumi he wants this particular phone, but Takafumi tells him that it is an old model, and he doesn't need a phone like that. Takafumi asks Uncle about his friends, and yes, you guessed right. This sorry excuse for an uncle literally has no friends. Uncle mentions that he wants a phone with a lot of buttons, and Takafumi tells him that technology has evolved, and everyone now uses a smartphone. This brings back a memory of when Uncle was in the other world. He told Takafumi that he also made an invention there. He made a pot of water that would never run dry for a village suffering from drought. Takafumi was so amazed, but his bubble was blown when Uncle told him that the people wanted to kill him. Takafumi was so confused, and Uncle then bursted his head even more when he tells him he can show him the memory instead of just telling him. Uncle proceeds to chant another spell that brings out this kind of magical iPad, and they begin to watch his memories there. It showed how he made the pot, how they destroyed the pot, and how the villagers wanted to kill him. When they were about to kill him, that same girl that he mentions always called him ugly came to his rescue. Then he escaped and started running like a 21st century baddie, and then they zoom in on the very beautiful girl who calls Uncle a coward. Uncle receives a notification that the auction for the phone he wants to buy is about to end. Uncle auctions and wins, but the shipping cost is even more expensive than the phone, so Uncle blows our minds one more time when he flies to get the phone. Takafumi, seeing this opportunity, started ordering a bunch of things online so that Uncle could go and pick it for him. Later, we see Uncle pull out a couple of things from his interdimensional storage. Among those things included some rings. Takafumi stares at the ring, wondering if they were given to him because he was in a relationship, but he declines. Takafumi asks if Uncle has any experience with love, and Uncle tells him that he does. He says he met his first love in grade school, and when Takafumi asked who the person was, Uncle replied, Sonic and Tails. There you have it. This man was born to die single. He then goes on and on to talk about video games, and Takafumi asks him if he actually does have any experience with actual people. And then, he tells Takafumi the story of how he saved a girl and her siblings, but they threw him off a cliff. And then, he was saved by the same beautiful elf. And this very stupid uncle says he doesn't want to owe anything to anyone. And he gives the elf a ring. Cute elf probably thought he was proposing to her, but as soon as they got to the next town, he took the ring from her, sold it, and gave her the cash. Does anyone know any word greater than stupid? Because this man was just that. Afterward, he tells Takafumi that the girl kept following him around. Uncle mentions to Takafumi that their views on YouTube have been dropping, but Uncle seems to be more interested in something else. It's an ancient magazine of Sega Saturn's history, and honestly, Takafumi doesn't give a dancing shit about this. Uncle checks and finds out that the game he wanted to win didn't win, and at first he pretends to be okay, but he is so definitely not. And he goes outside, and this old, ugly man begins to cry, bringing thunder and lightning to the vicinity simply because the game he wanted to come first came 197th. Uncle then tells Takafumi how he had an RPG-like encounter in the other world, and he proceeds to show Takafumi this with his magical iPad. It turns out that whenever Uncle arrived at a village, the villagers always wanted to end him, and I'm thinking it has something to do with the fact that he looked like a disgusting orc. Well, the same thing happened here, and this villager seemed to hate Uncle from the bottom of his heart. Fast forward a few scenes later, and we see this same villager begging Uncle to help them with a quest. He mentions that the legendary Blaze Dragon has risen, and the village will be burnt down if they do nothing about it. He tells Uncle that the only way to slay the dragon is by using the Ice Clan's God-freezing sword, and the only person that could wield the sword isn't cooperating. So apparently, this was a quest to get that person to cooperate. Uncle goes into the room that seems like they teleported into the North Pole, and he sees this very sexy-looking lady called Mabel. How dare them say this girl was from the Ice Clan 'cause Mama was smoking hot. She mumbles some rubbish about how her heart is frozen and how she misses seeing Poa Poa blossom, saying they are beautiful. And immediately after hearing this, Uncle steps out of the room, and here I am thinking that Uncle is finally going to do something wonderful, say maybe get the flowers. But no, once a fool, always an idiot. Uncle tells Takafumi that he went and slayed the dragon himself. My God, what is wrong with this man? He goes back and tells the villagers. And of course, they're grateful, but honestly I have no words for this uncle. Just as Uncle finished telling his disappointment of a story, the doorbell rings and Takafumi goes to the door. Turns out Takafumi ordered a Sega console with Uncle's best game, and Uncle was so happy that his face exploded with shock. Uncle then gives me the ugliest smile I've ever seen in my entire life. Uncle and Takafumi spend the rest of the day playing games and later go out to do a little shopping and come back home to discuss movies. Then Uncle shows Takafumi that they also celebrated New Year's Eve in the world he was coming from, and proceeds to pull out this magical iPad, and all I can denote from watching this part of his life is that Uncle is a lonely, useless loner, because while everyone jubilates, him and his ugly ass sit alone at a table. He finished and headed into his room. Takafumi is as flabbergasted as I am, and asks them to play Sega because apparently that was the only thing he could think to do in such a devastating scenario. In the middle of the game, Uncle tells Takafumi that Mabel actually came to his room that same night, and immediately Takafumi asks that they stop the game for him to see the story. So Mabel, the dumb hot ISEKAID girl, comes to see Uncle. She tells him she doesn't know what to do with her life now, and she wants to be strong like him. Uncle proceeds to give her extremely bad advice. At first, it seemed like he was making sense, but we all knew that the sense was nonsense the moment he mentioned Sega to her. This man. I really don't know how Takafumi keeps up with him, but I ain't gonna lie, Takafumi is really trying. The next day we see a lady walking across the street, and she sees Uncle murmuring to himself. She thinks he is mad, which he actually is, because there's no way in hell a normal person would behave like that. The lady runs into Takafumi and instantly recognizes him. He refers to her as Fujimiya, and we see that they were friends when they were much younger. Takafumi literally has no chills, and he invites her over. Way to go, bro. She goes home first and says she'll come to his place later. She comes over to Takafumi's place and sees that it's empty, and she waltz in. She's scoping the place when Uncle comes back from his usual Superman patrol and sees her. Immediately, he attacks her and tries to wipe her memory. She is honestly saved by Takafumi, who kicks his uncle in the face for being such a weirdo. Fujimiya demands an explanation for the madness she just witnessed, and Takafumi blurts out that his uncle is a magician. Now I see the stupidity runs in the blood. Fujimiya doesn't believe it and asks them to perform the magic right now, and they refuse, saying they can't do magic for free. She gets annoyed and starts telling Takafumi that he is wasting his life. Uncle, reading the air, stupidly blurts out that it seems Fujimiya has a crush on Takafumi. I have a serious question. Why are all the characters in this anime mad? Fujimiya turns redder than the blood of Jesus, and Takafumi makes everything 300 times worse when he tells his uncle that it's not possible. They are 100% friends. They then ask if Uncle has experience with love, and this bumbling idiot says he does, but instead begins to narrate a Sega game storyline, which infuriates Takafumi. Suddenly, he rushes to Fujimiya and reads her mind. Apparently, she changed her clothes and even took a shower before coming to visit Takafumi. God damn it. Uncle is brutal. A package arrives for him and he runs to collect it, and it's clear that without a doubt, Fujimiya hates Uncle with every fiber of her being. The next day after work, Takafumi comes back home, and you will not believe what he saw. He saw that weird elf lady that was always chasing after his uncle in the other world. He saw her in his apartment with Fujimiya. Bro literally wanted to pass out. We then see that 75 minutes ago, Takafumi receives a text message from Fujimiya telling him she's coming later. Just then, Uncle receives a mail from YouTube telling him they'll soon stop paying him because he didn't reach the required amount of subscribers. 1,000 subscribers were needed, and he only had 812. Takafumi wonders why, despite their high views, the subscribers are so low. Well, his wondering was cut absolutely short when he saw the shitty replies Uncle gave to every comment in the comment section. Totally glad this channel isn't like that. And do you know what was even worse? They had to get up to 1,000 subscribers before the end of that day. Uncle mentions that they are in a tight spot, and he hasn't been in this tight of a spot since the sealed city Luvaldram, when their defense magic failed and 1,000 beasts were released. Okay, we get it. Another one of Uncle's magical escapades. Takafumi now definitely wants to hear about it. I know you know what I'm about to say, but that won't stop me from saying it again. Uncle pulled out the magical iPad and began showing Takafumi the sealed city. So, it so happens that here again he meets Elf, who keeps on rambling about how Uncle is, but he pays not attention to her. She then proceeds to explain the power of the barrier, and oh my god, Uncle splits my consciousness in two when he pulls out 2 swords and causes a hole in the barrier. This drives me, the elf, and the people in the town to madness. Before you could even utter the phrase "Uncle is an idiot," 3 massive monsters show up. A Cyclops, Eren Yeager, and the Cloud Dragon. These beasts were about to make quick work of the entire town, and then the elf is about to put up a fight against these monsters, all 1,000 of them. And she does this dope sword move similar to the ones that the Power Rangers do. She tells Uncle he is very ugly one more time, and then flies like a superhero towards the outskirts of the town to battle the monsters. But something crazy happens. She slams into the barrier that we all thought was broken, and the embodiment of stupidity of an uncle mentions that he fixed the barrier. He might be ugly, but this fellow sure was strong. The people wonder what happened to the barrier, and the elf actually keeps quiet about Takafumi being the one to break the barrier. And how does Uncle thank her? He escaped in the middle of the night. Sigh. This man has given me more headache than being woken up for morning devotion. Shortly after his story, Uncle explains the problem to his viewers on YouTube, and even against Takafumi's approval. As God may have it, it worked, and they got up to 1,000 views almost immediately. At this point, Fujimiya walks into the house to meet a dejected Takafumi, and he goes out to buy something. Then we see Fujimiya and Uncle get into a deep conversation about Takafumi, but Fujimiya doesn't seem to pay him any attention because she feels Uncle actually has no sense, and let's be honest, she is not wrong. Who the hell will take advice from a weirdo such as Uncle? Uncle realizes this and tells her to wait while he goes, and when he appears back, he is carrying Elf's face, so that explains the madness we saw earlier, and we are back to where we started from. Takafumi comes into the house and is furious when he sees Uncle in this form because apparently Uncle could have used this form in the other world. He tells Uncle they have to shoot a YouTube video with this beautiful face, and Uncle first disagrees. But then after telling him they'll be shooting a gameplay video, he agrees. Fujimiya is still there looking more confused than the confused emoji, and after they had shot the video, Uncle in elf form decides he wants to show Fujimiya the first time her and Takafumi met, and when he brings out the magical iPad, Fujimiya is more than shocked. They tell her it's magic, but there's no flipping way she was going to believe that. She says it must be a hologram. Takafumi doesn't even want to waste time explaining, so he pulls out Uncle's ancient phone and tells Fujimiya that it's this machine that projects the image, and this girl believes. I already said it, the writers of this show just distributed madness among all of them. It turns out that the way Takafumi remembered Fujimiya wasn't very nice. Okay, let's be honest. If this was how this girl looked while growing up, she was way uglier than Uncle. Fujimiya almost passes out due to the shock. After that, Uncle decides to check his YouTube and sees that the video they just made is raking in a lot of views, about 200,000 views. He decides to watch the video and discovers that the camera didn't even get a glimpse of the gameplay, but instead was focused on him. Scratch that, her. The comments were even killing, and this was hilarious as hell, but it definitely killed Uncle's self-confidence, and his face reversed back to its original ugly form. Fujimiya, who is still in the house now, actually realizes that something diabolical is going on here, and she screams so loudly. Do you think Uncle and Takafumi will be able to calm her down? We are thrown back into Takafumi's memory to see where he was being bullied by his classmates, and Fujimiya comes to his rescue. But that's the insane thing. This girl was uglier than Uncle when growing up, and still, Takafumi looked up to her. Fujimiya tries to defend herself by telling Uncle that although she was uglier than the devil, she managed to become more girly when she got into middle school, and she shows Uncle a photo of her and Takafumi, and the picture was so cute that Uncle cannot resist taking the picture of that picture. She asks Uncle why he didn't just transfer the picture to his phone, and Uncle shows an ancient monstrosity of his device and tells her that his phone cannot make any modern transfers. I do not know what is wrong with this girl, but currently, this was the moment she decided to send Takafumi a very sexy picture of her that Takafumi wanted to delete immediately, saying it could get him killed, and immediately gets a notification that coffee beans are on sale. So he rushes out of the house, leaving Fujimiya utterly distraught and Uncle obviously weird, which is completely normal for him. Uncle teases Fujimiya that her swimsuit picture just lost to a notification for coffee beans. She gets a bit flustered and frustrated and bangs on the table, almost spilling Uncle's tea on her. Uncle then uses magic to freeze her and was about to use magic to heat her up. So Uncle advises her to take a shower and uses Takafumi's clothes for her. She takes a shower and comes out. She puts on Takafumi's clothes, and she begins to have stupid thoughts of Takafumi seeing her naked. Takafumi barges into the room, and embarrassment wants to kill this girl, because apparently she had no underwear on. Takafumi apologizes and rushes out. She realizes that Uncle left the whole apartment, and now only both of them were in the house. So she walks into the room that same way, and she meets Takafumi crying and says he is going to take responsibility for this. What an idiot. Since Uncle doesn't have a phone, they communicated by flags and smoke signals, and he told Fujimiya that he left the flag upside down, which meant danger, and Uncle would be home. Just as we are managing this ridiculous conversation, Uncle pops in looking like a Night Walker from Game of Thrones. Uncle asks what the problem was, and Takafumi tells him that he saw Fujimiya naked and wants him to wipe his memory. Fujimiya refuses, saying that he doesn't care that he saw her, but Takafumi insists. After the whole problem of wiping the mind or not wiping the mind, they all decide to share a drink. Uncle was first bothered because he thinks Fujimiya was a minor, but then tells her that today is her birthday. Then Uncle lets them know he is 35 years. Such an old, ugly man. Uncle then mentions that it is sad they do not have anything to offer her on her birthday, then proceeds to impact some weird word of wisdom, and then shows them a moment where he himself took alcohol for the first time in the other world. Uncle tells them that it was the night he turned 20, and honestly, I do not know how many times it has been said. Uncle is ugly. Then we see our elf lady, the one that keeps barging into Uncle. He engages her in a conversation. He gives her something to eat and tells her not to mention to anyone about how he broke the barrier, and begins to tell her about himself and why he is so strong. Our sexy elf tells him it was the venom dragon he slew that day. He says he has no idea proceeding to tell her about how he slew the blaze dragon. She did not believe he slayed the dragon without using the sword from the Ice Clan, thereby managing to convince her. Suddenly he asked her to follow him to his room. Has Uncle's 20 years of celibacy done him this much harm? She agrees to go with him after initially refusing, and it is when she follows him straight to the inn he was staying that he told her that he was drunk and thanked her for walking him back. Now I put it to you that you cannot begin to imagine the shock that was on the poor girl's face, and that is how Uncle went to sleep that night. Okay, I haven't said this, so I would say this. Uncle takes the trophy for easily being the weirdest person on this show. Takafumi does not even come close, and that boy is weird as shit. We see that the elf lady comes back the next day, and Takafumi and Fujimiya notice that she is blushing, making her cheeks redder than the blood of Jesus. Fujimiya is annoyed because she realizes what is going on, declares an indisputable fact that the elf lady has caught a very dangerous and deadly disease called love, and Uncle was too stupid to realize this. Fujimiya says she cannot watch this while she is sober, so she gulps down a can of alcohol and also gives Uncle another to gulp also. Uncle gulps. But before you scan, say Tom Holland, Uncle becomes drunk, and Fujimiya sees this as a perfect time and opportunity to run back home. But Uncle has other plans for them, and instead uses wind magic to carry all three of them, and better believe me when I say that they all screamed all the way to her house. Fujimiya comes up with a ridiculous idea for Uncle to make more money by becoming a professional baseball player, saying that if he uses magic to pitch at like 1,000 kilometers per hour, he would get a huge contract. Uncle then discloses to her and Takafumi that when he was younger, he disliked the baseball players in his class because he knew they bullied everyone in the class, but secretly loved them because they put in all their time and efforts into becoming professionals. So he refused? June 2018. Our three extremely weird weirdos, or rather two extremely weird weirdos and a weird lady, Uncle, Takafumi, and Fujimiya are seated. Then, Uncle decides to share another memory of his time in the other world. After Uncle finished exploring the dungeon, he realizes he was followed by someone wearing a brown hoodie. The person reveals herself, and it turns out that she was carrying a huge sword. She swings at Uncle, then uses the weapon to freeze his legs. Okay, turns out the weapon is made of ice. A few more slices, and Uncle realizes that this is Mabel. Mabel began to complain about how her life was miserable now that Uncle had slain the blaze dragon. Although she knows he saved them all in the village, he has now rendered her useless because she was supposed to pass down the weapon to someone else and live her life after slaying the dragon. Now she cannot do any of that because Uncle stupidly decided to butt in. After much complaining, tears, and about 10 minutes of Uncle still being bizarre about how she had ruined this girl's life, her ice finally melts, making her fall asleep on Uncle's body. Of course, Uncle being himself, decides to drag her back home. At home, while resting on his bed, she began to narrate how she was being chased from the village by the villagers, saying she was very useless, not being able to pass the ice sword to any successor, leaving her with the only option of working to earn a living. If not, they would treat her like a pet. Now, we have not really gotten into Mabel's part of the story, but this girl is nuts because she froze the legs of all 108 villagers and left all legs dripping with very cold water. He makes her blush a bit by making a reference to her ring on her left finger, telling her that the ring would provide for her for the rest of her life due to how valuable it was. This makes her icy heart melt instantly. She then asks Uncle to lend her some money, so she could take a bath. Uncle then casually tells her to sell off the ring, saying it would be sufficient enough to take care of her bathing fee, knowing fully well that Mabel was to be in a psychiatric hospital. He should not have told her this because she wanted to kill him immediately, if not for the fact that the elf walked in immediately. Elf actually misunderstood and thought that Uncle wanted to do immoral things with Mabel, so she cuts off the chain that Uncle used to handcuff Mabel, and Mabel would not allow this opportunity to pass, slices Uncle, freezing him in the process. Elf and Mabel then shake hands as if they had achieved a common goal, and they began to talk. It is at this point that Fujimiya noticed something. She noticed that Mabel was talking about her clan, and mentioned that since Uncle was from another world, maybe her people were from another world. She also mentioned that someone came into their world from a world called Japan Bahamal. Fujimiya draws Uncle and Takafumi's attention, and they begin to discuss how these guys know about Japan. Elf then changes the topic and tells her that she is sorry for her being married to an ugly orc, and while she was asleep. So it is not just bad that she married an ugly orc, she married this one while asleep. Unbelievable. Then we finally get to the part where we talk about the guy from Japan Bahamal. She starts the story that the founder of the Ice Clan was a knight from Japan Bahamal who lived 400 years ago. He lost his life in a great battle in Japan Bahamal, and was given a new life and body in Grabahamal. He then wishes to the god of this world to give him the ability to kill even him, the god. While she was telling her story, Elf interrupts her, only caring about what she thinks about Uncle, and Mabel begins to cry. Uncle then gets pissed off because he did not get any special power like that when he came into this world. They then began to search back. Maybe there was a time where God had given Uncle his power. So they scrolled back enough until they saw what seemed like a pre-recorded message, and they guessed it was God. The message read out that Uncle should pick any power of his choice, and Uncle wished he understood what they were saying. So that was how he got the power of translation. Uncle was about to dive into this story, but then he might just remember that he was sold for 3 coppers. Fujimiya and Takafumi decided that it was time to have coffee, so they all had coffee together. Uncle, 17 years old in another world, bleeding almost to death, is about to be sold off in a merchant shop, but I lose my mind when the only amount a whole uncle was appraised for was 3 copper. The shopman was adamant about not paying a copper more, and he even went ahead to buy some rubbish found on the floor for 120 copper. I mean, we all knew it, but Fujimiya just had to make things worse by mouthing out that Uncle was worthless. Just then, blood begins to drop from Uncle and Takafumi's nose, and we all figure out it's because somehow they wiped their memories of this particular incident. It came back with blood, and it's the spirit's way of asking them not to go any further into this. They then make Fujimiya read the book too. These guys have finally induced Fujimiya into their cult of stupidity. Back to the memory, the adventurers that tried to sell Uncle left him for dead. I mean, something you sold for less than 3 copper? The shop owner then took Uncle and put him in a cage for animals where he was forgotten for a week. Uncle, being dealt blows by hunger and thirst and lack of light, only managed to survive because of a little light seeping into the prison cell. Uncle had finally lost it. Mind you, he is just 17 years old, but I don't know his name, so yes, Uncle. And by the way, he still looks older than my grandpa. Uncle had finally lost it. He found himself speaking to the light and discussing Sega games, and it would seem the light was communicating back to him, which was so weird. But like we've already said, Uncle is insanely weird. He then begins to tell the light that the light was the most beautiful thing he had seen since he stepped into this world. And funny how this was actually the truth. So maybe the light spirit was a woman, and maybe she fell for his sweet words, because the next thing I see is the light spirit giving Uncle some words to chant, and Uncle rushing to implement it. Uncle does, and we see him literally break the light, and it turns into a first-class, very decent lightsaber, which he uses to break free from the cell and also release all the animals from the cell as well. Fujimiya then realizes that maybe the source of Uncle's weird power was the ability to understand languages that even made him communicate with the spirits, which probably was the origin of his insane power. After breaking free and releasing the animals, he realizes that these creatures were not as cute as they looked when one of the beasts went for his carotid artery. He manages to throw that beast away and more attack him, and even the very wicked owner of the shop. I get this very sweet joy in my stomach when I see one of them munch on this dude's leg. Beautiful. Uncle regains his composure, realizing that there's no way he is just gonna die like that. He pulls out the lightsaber, and I'm telling you, fellas from Star Wars need a lesson from this guy. The wicked owner of the store wanted to first appreciate him, but he takes one look at Uncle and realizes that Uncle is not in the low mood anymore. Okay chants a spell and sends this wicked man on a trip to Damascus. Uncle then proceeds to finish off every last beast there. He eats them and thanks them for giving him his first meal in this world. This story was quite intense, and it's at this point that Fujimiya tells them that she would like to go home now, since they were eating fried chicken, and she would not want to miss her fried chicken. Takafumi agrees with her, and just when they were about to leave, Uncle tells them that things got worse from here. This confuses them, but also spikes an interest, and they decide to chill and watch the rest of the show. Honestly, I would prefer this to any new Hollywood movie. So, they were so interested to know what happened, and Uncle told them it was the time he saved Elf from the Venom Dragon. Now, I also wanted to see this part. He skips to the end of the fight and showed us where he stabbed the creature, and he tells us that the elf had already hit deadly blows to the beast's vitals, and it was just a matter of time before the beast fell. He defeated the beast, and that's the first time he meets Ms. Tsunder, who we all know as Elf, and the first thing she says is that he must be an orc since he is very ugly. Honestly, what's with these people and Uncle's sad mistake for a face? It was appalling, but I just kept on thinking about how that was the biggest problem for all the people in this world. Just how Uncle was ugly. Fighting the Venom Dragon made Ms. Tsundere lose all her clothes, so Uncle had to give her his hoodie for her to use to cover up herself. She wanted to attack him but regained her composure and put the knife back into the space bag or alternate dimension compartment, or whatever this was. Uncle became a bit afraid, thinking she might have hurt herself, but turns out it wasn't. Of course, now she thinks Uncle is a perv. Oh please. This dude wouldn't know what to do with a pair of succulent human female melons, except they were converted into Sega gamepads, and Elf ran away. We then go back to see the part where Mabel froze Uncle in ice, and Uncle wakes up to see these two beauties sleeping on him with all their round products. Uncle asks what's going on, and she gives a lame excuse, which Uncle buys hook, line, and sinker. Elf then asks to come closer to him, but before she can move, Mabel had made her move already, and it was war getting Mabel to finally wake up. Mabel, Uncle, and Ms. Tsundere all discuss what can be done to Mabel's despicable state, and Uncle suggests she sells the ring he gave her. She considers this, and Elf even urges her to go on with it because stupid Uncle had already sold her own for her. After much pondering and discussing, Uncle decides to take all of them for breakfast, so they ate, finally got introduced to themselves, but Elf didn't give her name, and Uncle gave a very, very stupid alias. Dude called himself Wolf Gunblood. They discuss more and decide to head separate ways, and since Fujimiya had missed her chicken, Uncle took them all out to have a ramen, and boy was it good. We see Elf, up awake and wearing Wolf Gunblood's hoodie. I beg you to remind me not to ever call Uncle that in my entire life. She picks up a necklace which actually looks like a ring. Oh, I guess it's the one that Uncle gave her. She picks up the ring, and just then she notices Uncle and asks him what he wants and how long he has been there for. Uncle just tells her he came to collect her hoodie and magically chains her to the wall before proceeding to zip it down, but the idiot realizes that he can't remove it unless he unchains her, and when he does, she gives him a blow that almost sends him back to the world he was coming from. She just stylishly bandaged his head and ran away. Uncle then tells Takafumi that although he was not able to get the hoodie back, he was able to get her pretty dress, and they decide to test it on Fujimiya. And oh my god, is this dress sticking to her body. She wonders why she was given this kind of a dress to wear, but it just turns out that they wanted to see what she would like in the dress. I mean, I also did too. It turns out they were looking for a name for Uncle's ability, and they decided to go with the one picked by Takafumi. Fujimiya tells them that she's going to college to meet someone, but it's a freaking Saturday. Takamiya thinks it's weird, and as soon as she leaves, Uncle begins to show Takafumi the weird move he used to kill goblins in Sega and how he used it in the other world, and he began to show Takafumi. So this time in the other world, Uncle works together with another team to bring down goblins, Alicia, Edgar, and Rega. The guys were suspicious of him at first, and Regi mentions that even if he is not an orc, he is closer to the goblins than to the humans. Honestly, these guys were savage as hell. Alicia then asks him to go on the quest with them, and he agrees, and also tells them to leave the fight to him, saying he had won many like this. The goblins ganged up on him and were beating him, but then he decides to do a Sega move called the Death Stab to win this fight. But as expected, it didn't work, and Uncle had to use another move called the Golden Axe techniques. Since they had finished the mission, they decided to return home after splitting the earnings, and that's when Alicia mentions that she saw him rebuild the barrier in the sealed city Luveldram. Upon hearing this, Uncle asks her if she had told anyone, and she told him she hadn't. Uncle blew my mind when he used the memory clearing spell on her. Oh no, he didn't stop there. He went on ahead to use the spell on Edgar and Raiga, clearing all their memories. This was insane. I thought this guy just made friends and now they won't be able to see him again or remember his face. Takafumi asks Uncle if he ever met them again, and Uncle proceeds to tell the story of how he met them again, and this time he realizes he was able to understand a particular beast's language. So it turns out, the three of them, Alicia, Edgar, and Raiga, introduce themselves to him again and this time tell him they are after a monster hedgehog, and the way they describe the monster to him makes it seem as if this monster is Sonic. Yes, that blue Sonic that we all know. Uncle tells them not to harm the monster, and instead he will try to talk to it. So Uncle tries to talk with this monster, and this monster has a serious lot of family issues because it tells Uncle that human meat is disgusting, and he hates eating it. And when Uncle then asks him why he kills them if he doesn't like their meat, he tells them it's because their dying screams are music to his ears. Wait. Uncle gets furious and burns up the hedgehog, burning the whole piece of land with it. And it's at this part of the story that Takafumi sees that Fujimiya forgot her phone, so he asks Uncle to take him to her college, and Uncle agrees. Takafumi takes a good look and sees Fujimiya walking with this weird-looking, dangerous guy, and he says he must find out who that person is and what the person wants with Fujimiya, and the girl even looks scared. The next thing is that Takafumi tells Uncle they should make a landing. He wants to make sure this guy is a good guy. Uncle makes it so Takafumi will be able to cast the same spells as him if things go south, so Takafumi went to meet Fujimiya and her scary-looking friend. He walks up to them and immediately realizes it's her younger brother. And boy, does ugliness run in this family? Because dude looks exactly like his elder sister when she was young. The younger brother, who we now know his name is Chiaki, and he introduces himself to him, and the boy gets so excited to see Takafumi. Uncle then shows up, and Chiaki introduces Uncle as a YouTuber. Chiaki gets so excited, and Uncle gets even more excited, and they start their weird discussion. Takafumi seizes that moment to run away with Fujimiya. She is surprised to see that he has learned how to use magic, and he even uses it very fast because he found a method to communicate better with the spirits. Just seemed as if he was chanting the spells in shorthand. Fujimiya took Takafumi to a classroom where Takafumi showed her a memory from when they were kids of how he thought some guys shoved her and he ran to her rescue. It was actually very funny seeing as she was the one who was bullying them. Just then, one of Fujimiya's friends steps into the class, and everything becomes weird, and everybody now has to go home. Alicia Adelcia stabs the ground like the epic hero she declares herself to be. Edgar's expression on his face is like he just lost $1 million worth of a blade, but we can all tell the quality of the blade by how easily it chipped on hitting the ground. Alicia grovels on the floor asking for Edgar's forgiveness. Fujimiya and Takafumi are stunned by the fact that the so-called hero grovels at her feet. Kuroki asks Alicia how long they've been heroes, and she replies 6 months. Kuroki casts a spell that shows how they became heroes. Apparently, the town thinks they saved them from monsters that have been terrorizing the town, but in the memory lane, Alicia and her brothers do not even recall what happened. Kuroki turns around to leave, but is stopped by Alicia and informs him that she knows he's the one who reconstructed the barrier in the sealed city Luvendrun. Alicia says she'll keep it a secret. For a moment, it looked like Kuroki was about to slice off her neck because she knows that piece of information. The hero party and Kuroki arrive at the dungeon. The hero party exclaims happily on how they've always wanted to explore the dungeon since their childhood. Kuroki is curious, and he's told that since they've become heroes, the guild has allowed them to explore the dungeon. They're just like those people in American horror movies who run right to their deaths, because I don't know why 3 fresh heroes who know how weak they are will run right into a dungeon called the Labyrinth of Darkness. Kuroki casts the same spell and sees the memory of them as children, saying they want to explore the dungeon. What a bad dream come true. They all step into the dungeon, and a few steps in, Kuroki steps up and casts 3 spells which open a door, and they obtain some very important and powerful-looking staff. Just as Merlin is so unpredictable, Kuroki erases their memory in the blink of an eye. Fujimiya and Takafumi shout, wondering why their Oji-san would do that. He then explains that the staff they just collected is the price for conquering the dungeon. He replaces their memory with new ones of them fighting monsters and other dungeon-conquering activities. They all exit the labyrinth, and Kuroki tells them he has urgent business in the capital, so he has to leave. Alicia gives him 3 healing spell cards as he takes his leave. The screen in front of Ichi, Takafumi, and Oji-san closes. Fujimiya compliments Oji-san on how cool he was then. Like every other Oji-san in the world, he goes on to ruin the compliment by doing something uncool. Oji-san and the 2 younglings discuss the differences between now and Oji-san's school time. Takafumi urges that he wants to know about what happened in the capital, then to talk about depressing things. Oji-san goes ahead to show them an epic scene of him torturing information out of a captain. Though the captain's men were there, they could do nothing but point spears and pointy swords at him. As soon as he gets the information about the manipulations by the church, he immediately teleports out of there. Takafumi and Fujimiya ask why he went to the capital, and he tells them it's about the heroes' party. They were granted a title way beyond their capabilities. The bishop and the head of the military cast their plot on how they sent the heroes to the dungeon labyrinth of darkness in order for them to meet their end. And what? Kuroki has been in the scene all along disguised as a bodyguard, and as soon as the plot was revealed, he revealed his presence also. Before the bishop, the commander, you and I can fathom what's going on, Kuroki makes his way to the commander. The commander's bodyguard tries to close the distance to launch an attack, but Kuroki quickly shows a memory of her reporting to the commander, saying a horde of goblins has appeared and 3 adventurers who don't look up to the task are nearby, and the command issued to her by the commander was that the 3 of them should be killed. The commander defends himself, saying that the hero party knew the risk when they signed up. Kuroki loses his feet due to his inability to debate with the big shot commander. The commander orders his men to seize Kuroki. Kuroki casts a spell, and even the soldiers recognize it's a transformation spell. Kuroki goes ahead to transform into the best life form. He blows literally everyone's mind away as he transforms into his home-run teacher from middle school. Yes, even I was expecting a dragon. Oji-san explains to Takafumi and Fujimiya that the teacher had excellent argumentative skills, which Kuroki goes ahead to exhibit and wins over the commander. While that was going on, though, the commander received nothing less than 4 wonderful slaps. And even as the commander's head guard came around to stop Kuroki, she also received a few face dustings. Takafumi and Fujimiya are stunned to the bone. A legendary guardian called Mabel makes a dramatic entrance as she sends a spell of ice towards Kuroki, and thus a legendary battle began. Fire, ice, what unmatched speed. A fierce battle between Mabel and Kuroki. Fujimiya exclaims on how 2 friends are going toe-to-toe with each other. Oji-san shows them that the battle is actually an illusion. The real Kuroki and Mabel were sitting behind the soldiers. What a classic magician's misdirection. Kuroki and Mabel involve in a conversation, and as soon as Kuroki tells Mabel she's cute, the commander realizes the battle was all an illusion. Everyone has caught up to reality, and all of a sudden Mabel begins to attack Kuroki for real. Kuroki makes way and strikes her with his small sword enchanted with magic. Mabel gets herself back. Kuroki explains to the commander that only holy magic can offer mind control. He then turns to the bishop, who is baffled that Kuroki could break his high-level spell. Kuroki questions the commander's judgment of working with the unworthy bishop, even if it was a good cause to protect the people of the land. Why stoop so low? The rest of the soldiers plead for the commander to call off the attack on the hero party. He calls it off, and Kuroki tells him that if a threat ever arises, he should shout out his name. As Kuroki was about to call out his name, the commander introduces himself first as Ricardo Markfed. Kuroki goes ahead and tells them his name, Wolfgunblood. The bishop yells at the commander that he has lost his touch. What can Kuroki do? Lol. Kuroki goes ahead and transforms into a blazing dragon this time, shutting the bishop up and filling everyone's mind with awe. Oji-san closes the memory TV show, and Fujimiya notices marks on Takafumi's body. Takafumi informs them that he used magic a while ago. Oji-san tells him the spirits are in love with him, and the spirit of transformation is transforming him into something. Oji-san casts a spell, and the 2 of them turn into dinosaurs, like from Jurassic Park. Oji-san and Takafumi seated at a table feeling the intense wave of heat. Oji-san goes to the console to play games, but it does not work. Takafumi comes around and says, probably the heat is getting to the console too. Fujimiya returns and offers them ice cream. Immediately, they rush through the ice cream. She brings up a brilliant idea. Since he's got magic, why doesn't he use it to cool the place? and Oji-san immediately creates a chill wind. Fujimiya expresses her disappointment in the fact that none of them thought of that idea before. Takafumi said it's because of the heat, and Oji-san added that they were also dragons for an hour, so it made thinking seem too complicated. Fujimiya advises to get an AC but no funds. Not to talk about the cost of electricity, Fujimiya asks if they could upload the memories they've been watching on YouTube, but Takafumi rejects, saying that people would rate it low and drop bad comments. Fujimiya drifts the conversation by asking how the spirits look. Takafumi imagines that they're fine, attractive spirits in feminine form, but Oji-san tells them that they don't have a form. They're more of an entity. Their wills just magically drift into his thoughts. Oji-san hears from the ice spirit and he says it demands a cow's head as compensation for the spell he cast to cool the room. Fujimiya brings out his phone and checks the price of a cow. 5 million yen. Fujimiya questions why it needs compensation, and Oji-san explains and also says that if they don't sacrifice the head of the cow to the spirit, it's going to freeze over the earth for 10 years. The fee for cooling a room is wiping out humanity? Oji-san goes over to the kitchen and grabs a fish to cook, and he hears from the spirit again. And this time, it says the fish head is enough. Fujimiya and Takafumi worry about how little the spirits care about the continuity of the human race and why Oji-san is so chill about it. The sacrifice is made, and Oji-san drools over the head of the fish. Fujimiya yells at him, and he explains that being in dragon form makes raw meat delectable. Fujimiya finally asks why Oji-san joined Takafumi in the dragon form, and he replies that he doesn't want Takafumi to feel lonely. Fujimiya expresses her fear and how she thought they would revert back to humans. Takafumi asks Fujimiya if she would like to join them, and she denies. With that said, Oji-san explains to them that one should not remain in dragon form too long, else they'll not be able to turn back to human. He explains further with an example of when he left the commander in blazing dragon form. He was stuck in that form for over a month. He was later released when a tsundere elf hunter came and beat him from dragon form back into orc form. He uses his memory spell to show them how it happened while he explained. After he reverted to human form, the elf sat there and laid his head on her legs while he sleeps. Another elf of the Regfalgen company shows up with his troops. He teases her to hand Kuroki over to them, and she'll receive a handsome reward, though it's not as handsome as the debt she owes him. He teases her further, and Takafumi and Fujimiya find out that she's a royal princess of the Elga family. She makes a move to attack the Regfalgen, but he pulls out a spell card which chokes her. He reminds the princess that they're bound by a no-violence contract. As the Regfalgen goes on teasing about how a marriage would solve this debt issue, Kuroki gets up and cuts off the spell choking the princess, which causes the spell card to fade away. Kuroki tells her that he has returned the favor for her turning him back. He immediately, like he doesn't care what's going on, he just turns around and leaves. The princess holds him back, and all of a sudden, a huge figure who goes by the name Duldor steps into the scene and requests that since the no-violence pact has been cancelled, he'll like to teach the princess some manners. Just as the elf and the Regfalgen warriors edge to fight, Kuroki pops out of nowhere and offers the Regfalgen a ring. This enraged the elf princess. She immediately and terrifyingly powers up, causing the ground to break. Kuroki jumps at her, and they land in a mud. The Regfalgen take their leave. Kuroki and the elf princess head towards a hot spring. Oji-san closes the memory spell, and they realize that the temperature is dropping below 10 degrees. Fujimiya asks Oji-san to stop the ice spell for a while. They cover themselves under a blanket, and Oji-san shows them what the dark blade does. Another day under the blazing heat of summer, Sawaya gets to Takafumi's apartment complex building, saying she has to save Fujimiya from him. She searches for his apartment number until she's approached by a crazy-looking goon who says he wants to have fun with her Chiaka. Takafumi walks down the stairs and nonchalantly greets Sawaya like nothing weird was just happening. They all walk up the stairs to Takafumi's apartment. He talks with Chiaki, who had uploaded a new video to the internet. They tease that they took pictures of a lady, but it's actually a dead insect. Sawaya just walked behind them, feeling irritated. Upon arriving at the apartment, Sawaya warns Fujimiya that her brother and Takafumi are men who think of women as collectibles like in manga. However, Fujimiya doesn't buy it. They all see the fish altar in the living room, and Fujimiya mentions it's an offering to the Japanese spirits, but Sawaya questions why it's not cucumbers or eggplants. because offerings are normally either a cucumber or eggplant. Fujimiya tells Takafumi that she hopes Ojisan doesn't come flying in. Takafumi informs her that he put up a flag. The spirits will let him know not to swoop in. Sawai overhears their conversation and tries to leave, with Fujimiya believing the apartment. As they approach the door, they meet Ojisan coming in and closing the door. He greets and he smiles, but his assuring and beautiful smile freaks out Sawai. Sawa tells Oji-san not to involve Fujimiya in their cult activities. Oji-san misreads Sawa and thinks she was talking about the videos he uploads online. Sawa questions Fujimiya, asking why she's always here. Sawa then picks up that Fujimiya has feelings for Takafumi. Sawa then devises a plan and decides to test if Takafumi reciprocates the feelings. Sawa first sends Fujimiya on a fool's errand, asking her to get coffee, which plays as a distraction so she can have time with Takafumi. Sawa then shows Takafumi 2 pictures of her and Fujimiya to see his reaction. I don't know if I'm disappointed. Yes, I am. Takafumi is shown 2 pictures of 2 beautiful women, and he's more interested in the NPC men in the background. That's some fishy tendencies. However, Fujimiya picks up on the facade that she's been sent on a fool's errand and intervenes by bumping Chiaki into Takafumi. Sawa doesn't recognize Chiaka because of his growth spurt. As soon as Oji-san finds out, the instant he finds out that Sawa is an old friend of Fujimiya, Oji-san proceeds with utmost carefulness and fully displays his magic to everyone in a bid to reveal what Fujimiya looked like in middle school. Chiaki was but of course also intrigued by the magic and moves closer to see clearer what's going on. Takafumi and Fujimiya quickly take control of the situation by alerting Oji-san about what he was doing. Oji-san reverts to his old ways of making use of his magic to erase their memories, but before he could wipe away their identities from their minds, Takafumi restrains Oji-san, allowing Fujimiya to drag Sawai and Chiaki out of the apartment. Fujimiya yells at Oji-san for nearly factory resetting Sawa and Chiaki's memories. Oji-san apologizes and recalls experiencing a similar situation with the elf at the hot spring. Oji-san contacts the memory spirit and asks if it was safe. He then shows a memory of him and the elf at the hot spring. When the 2 of them arrived at the hot spring, Oji-san immediately notices that the sign on the doorstep of the hot spring was in Japanese. Elf comments that Oji-san truly was a reincarnation from another world like Mabel. Yes, the elf adds on to reveal that the hot springs founder Moriyama created the place 20 years ago but died at the old age of 88 after staying in the world for 10 days, and he was also a reincarnation. The hot springs' present owner, who goes by the name Grandstone, then greets and welcomes them to the hot spring named Purgatory. Grandstone also informs them that the reincarnation people who die are sent back to their original world. When they did, everything they own vanishes with them. The elf plays her tricks in order for her and Kuroki to share a room. Kuroki finds out that he's sharing a room with Elf, which displeases him. He just wants to have his rest. The owner's young daughter offers to prepare him a room of his own, but Elf scares her away. Elf's excitement about the room's style because 2 beds were already laid next to each other. But Kuroki wants his privacy. He drags his futon into another room to rest in. Elf was upset that she'll be sleeping alone. Kuroki returns in a creepy way to the room and gives Elf an unwanted foot massage. This foot massage is looking 18+. It's almost a spice of life. Oji-san notices something. He casts a chain spell and uses it to pull the door. We find Alicia, Edgar, and Raiga eavesdropping on their moment together. As Alicia and Elf go to one corner to have their woman talk, the elf brags that Kuroki gave her a ring, and she asks Alicia if Kuroki gave her any. She wants to know if she's in competition with anyone. Kuroki receives his share of the award by Raiga and Edgar for his previous help slaying the hedgehog monster. When Oji-san asks what the hero party is doing there, Raiga reveals they're training themselves to become stronger by refining their strength and skills. Oji-san becomes intrigued when he hears special skill and uses his memory magic on Edgar, showing his training with Raiga. It also reveals a fancy sheath being used as a laundry rack, and the elf asks where the group found it and heads off alone to its location after learning it. Oji-san explained to Takafumi and Fujimiya that Elf was going after an elven treasure. The memory continues with Kuroki asking if the hot spring was well protected, and Raiga reveals that it was built with God's blessing. However, a giant monster immediately set fire to one of the buildings, leaving Kuroki speechless. Under the influence of the hypno beast, Lena, the innkeeper's daughter, sets loose the monster into the hot spring area. Well, Kuroki is useless because he's incapable of casting any magic, thanks to a couple of anti-magic birds flying around, which forced him to use a couple of his physical enhancement magic. Watching this scene unfold, Takafumi and Fujimiya internally note how awkwardly Oji-san used them. They then watch as Edgar and Raiga supposedly praise Oji-san. However, it turns out they meant someone else. Having his hopes raised and then shattered, Oji-san retreats to the bathroom, but not before telling the two to continue watching his memory. When they do, Edgar and Raiga praise Oji-san, which Takafumi and Fujimiya try to tell Oji-san, but are prevented by his foul and upset mood. With Oji-san locked in the bathroom, Takafumi insists they continue watching Oji-san's memory, which irks Fujimiya. As the memory continues, Oji-san defeats one of the anti-birds using wind, fire, and ice magical talismans. The remaining bird was sniped by the elf using the scabbard she located in the mountains and a pair of magical glasses. While the memory shows elf sniping at Oji-san to get his attention, Oji-san explains to Takafumi and Fujimiya about the anti-magic bird's demonic breath that suppresses magic capabilities. Because of the lingering demonic breath stench, Oji-san could not use his magic. Returning to where Alicia's side, she was pursued by the now hypnotized Edgar, Raiga, and Lina. Oji-san regroups with her, and she heals his burn wounds. After Oji-san twists Alicia's wand in hopes there is a useful mechanism to it, two barriers are erected around the two groups. Once Alicia got herself together a little, she proceeded to undo the hypnotization spell cast on Edgar, Raiga, and Lena. After she does this, the Hypno Beast tries to attack her. She one-punch KOs it with a move originally used by Raiga. Oji-san reveals to Takafumi and Fujimiya that Alicia's wand boosted her physical strength and granted her access to Raiga's special technique. Once the Hypno Beast regains consciousness, it flees and attracts the attention of some monster hellhounds, which are dealt with by Oji-san's water magic. The spell uses sea dragons, which traps the hellhounds and bursts them like water balloons. The water dragons too burst, causing a rain-like event which cools off the flames surrounding the area. Afterward, Oji-san erects a barrier around the now exposed bathing area, which pleases the hot spring owners because it has a lovely view of the mountain area. Oji-san takes another bath like a normal human being this time, and all of a sudden was joined by Alicia. As she walks into the spring, she unintentionally exposes herself a little, which Oji-san erases from his memory sharp. In the present, Oji-san faces the consequences for breaking the rule about regaining an erased memory, but blames it on seeing something perverted. As the memory continues, Alicia learns that she's probably older than Kuroki because he mentions that he's 20, which shocks her because she thought he was in his 30s. He looks quite old, actually, and I don't know what he's been doing with his life. Alicia consoles herself that he's but a few months younger than her. Alicia then confesses that she has no memories of dating before she was 9 years old. So Alicia asks Oji-san to use his memory magic to figure out the cause of her amnesia, and he agrees. Alicia's earliest memory that she can recall was being rescued after goblins attacked her carriage. She'd later be adopted by the village Raiga and Edgar lived in, received the name Alicia, and is believed to have lost her family from the goblins who ambushed her carriage. Guilt-ridden from what he had watched, Oji-san reveals to Alicia that he had erased her memory twice and what the memories entailed. Alicia is enraged and asks him to never erase her memories again, or anyone's memory, including his. Oji-san reveals he's from another world and his motive for why he broke the barrier that he later repaired. Upset by Oji-san's revelations, Alicia demands that he never use his memory eraser magic again. Oji-san agrees to Alicia's demand, but only agrees to never use it on her again, or erase any of his memories of her, which Alicia holds him to. He informs her that the memory of her garment loosening was already erased, and the scene then gets messy when Alicia tries to recreate the lost memory of her to Oji-san, and someone snipes at them from afar. Oji-san explains that monsters attacked. Alicia got upset and Elf started blasting. He totally misreads the situation again. Fujimiya and Takafumi are stunned by how little he could read the situation on what's going on. He can't tell me that he doesn't see that those girls love him. Once the memory was over, Takafumi and Fujimiya advised Oji-san not to erase any more of his memories, like when he had his meltdown in the bathroom. But Oji-san revealed that he didn't wipe his memory to settle his mood, but used what's called a kill sensitivity technique, which kills your emotions before they take a toll on you. Oji-san advises that they try it sometimes, and just as Fujimiya disagrees, Takafumi tries out this technique on himself, which shocks Fujimiya. Takafumi comments that it's like you're dead from the inside. Fujimiya grabs Takafumi and tries to snap him out of the spell. Oji-san tries to show Fujimiya and Takafumi the Sega Saturn warning voice from a Strikers 1945 disc, but he immediately becomes disconcerted after learning there's no CD player in the household and that the new generation hasn't heard the warning voice. After Takafumi looks up an alternative on the internet, Fujimiya then asks what would happen if someone tried to play a Sega Saturn CD on a CD player. Oji-san briefly explains it to Sumika and then throws in information about a singing beast he once encountered. Curious to know more, Oji-san shows them the memory that takes place a month after the hot spring event. Kuroki accepted a quest to subjugate the singing beast in a forest. Wasting no time, Kuroki uses his magic to charge at the beast but crashes into it, and learns that the monster was made of ice and created by Mabel. Uncle tells Fujimiya and Takafumi about the singing monster he encountered while in the other world. He pulls out the magical iPad and tells them this happened about a month after the hot spring incident. This beast actually seemed to be singing, and it's singing very beautifully if you ask me. Turns out the beast wasn't any magical singing creature, but instead it was Mabel. This girl has destroyed any primal good eyes I used to look at her with. She's just so weird. At this point, we all thought Mabel was a knight in the palace, but she just disclosed to us right now that she has left the palace, and now she's free once again. So she's not only useless, but also lazy as well, and even more now so jobless. So Mabel, not wanting to die, destroyed the scary-looking ginormous ice sculpture, and she and Uncle started conversing. She wonders what she's going to do with her life from here on out. Uncle tells her there are a good number of things she can do, and it's at this point that she brings out her ring and admires it, and Uncle tells her to sell it, but she gave Uncle killing looks. They discuss a bit more, and Uncle tells her she has a very good voice, that if she was born in Japan, she would have made a lot of money from her singing. And they share a weird moment before Uncle then asks her to sing a song from his world for him. He teaches her the song, and she starts singing. Meanwhile, Takafumi and Fujimiya were really looking forward to hearing what song it was that Uncle thought Mabel, and they were above disappointed when they heard the song. And it turned out to be a song from the UFO catcher in the run-down arcade that Uncle liked to visit. Uncle passed out due to happiness from hearing the song, and while he was asleep, some knights from the castle wanted to apprehend him. But Elf was there, and she fought them off and protected everyone. The next morning, Elf approached Wolf Gunblood and started acting like a very jealous girlfriend. They talk for a bit and share a very stupid moment, and Uncle finally tells her his name, and she tells him that her own name is... Uncle shortens her name and says he'll start calling her Sui. And she pretends not to like the name but loves it dearly. Uncle also tells her she has beautiful eyes, and she blushes whenever he calls her Sui. Shortly afterwards, Mabel comes up to them and sees that Elf is wearing a ring. They ask what Uncle was actually doing here at this point, and he tells them he wanted to take on the shrine trial, and he points towards the shrine. Turns out this song that Mabel was singing yesterday, and it talked about a calamity befalling the world if the 3 shrines are destroyed. Uncle once again shows us why he is Uncle, and he destroys the shrine and a spirit erupted from it. It's at this point that we realize that Uncle has actually destroyed the 2 shrines already, and with this one now it's making it the 3rd. Uncle pulls out his lightsabers and fires them at the spirit. It's about to attack, but Mabel defends. The next thing we see is Uncle throwing balls of fire that morphed into a dragon. Just then, it seemed the spirit took over Uncle and was about to obliterate the girls when Raiga stepped in and gave him a Superman punch. The trio are here again, and Alicia wants to use her powers to help Uncle regain his self. But one look at Uncle's memories and Alicia falls down. She says Uncle was alone in a dark room and the past was too darker than her powers even. Uncle broke out of the spirit's hold on his own, and the next thing we see is that Uncle released the blaze dragon into the spirit, and they morphed together. What in the heavenly hell was Uncle thinking? Turns out that there was fire. It was a dragon, the blaze dragon. He says that the blaze dragon revives using concentrated holy magic. Alicia tells them that they should avoid getting too close to it because it can use body manipulation magic, and then asks him, "What are your plans?" Uncle says that they should not worry since they have Mabel and the God-freezing sword, but turns out that Mabel and the God-freezing sword are a bust. So, Edgar and Rhaegar begin to bully Mabel for being utterly useless, and she comes up with the idea that they should attack with so much speed and power so they would surpass his regeneration ability, making them win. She shows them her sword and tells them that it is an ancient artifact that focuses power and releases it at once. So, she suggests that instead of her usual lightning magic, they use Uncle's overpowered magic and focus it into the artifact and release it all at once. Elf is assured that with this plan, they can win. Then Alicia reminds everyone that the dragon still has the ability to control minds, and Elf tells them that she has a gem that can defend her against that ability. Alicia calls out Uncle and tells him that she hasn't told Edgar and Rhaegar that he was the one that defeated the goblins. They then talk a bit about how he saw her naked and wiped her memory. At this point, Elf decides to call Mabel to come and greet the three of them. Mabel introduces herself to them as the one that is wielding the God-freezing sword. They ponder whether to attack while it is still reviving, but they decide against it, since they need a physical form to attack it. It is at this point that Elf asks Uncle to carry her because she needed someone to fly her around. Uncle split my brain into 3 pieces when he dangles her by a chain. Useless. Mabel tries to make an escape at this point. She goes left, but the dragon's eyes go with her. Going right also, the dragon follows suit. It would seem as though the grudge the monster had with the Ice Clan is bigger than we all thought. The dragon has reached its full awakening. They decided to use Mabel as bait, but Mabel is so scared. She gets angry and rushes toward the Blaze Dragon. Very useless move if you ask me. The Blaze Dragon strikes the floor, sending a very huge rock towards her. Luckily for her, Alicia stepped in, dividing the rock. Uncle mentions that the others are baiting the dragon properly, so they continued to discuss, and Elf reveals to Uncle that she isn't sure if they can win the Blaze Dragon. The Blaze Dragon continues its attack while the others continued in their defense. It is about time these guys got into the action. Takafumi had to stop the show and cry because they have finally gotten to the alley they had been waiting for. They make some coffee, and Takafumi tells us that it has actually been 10 months since Uncle woke up. They continue the battle. Uncle and Elf take off and the dragon releases its blue flame at them. It turns out that Uncle pulled out a shield and then threw Elf up in the air for her to attack. As Elf was reaching out to attack, the Blaze Dragon was also out to get her. Thankfully, Mabel decided to have some use and was able to hold the Blaze Dragon in place for just a moment. Due to that, the Blaze Dragon was at one point long enough for Uncle and Elf to charge the sword and then took off in the air. After charging the weapon, Elf fired it at the dragon with everything that she had, making her fall to the ground. Uncle rushed in just in time and grabbed her by the hand, making them land safely on the ground. I could have sworn that they did some kissing at this point, but Uncle does not and blows my head again when he smells her hair, saying she smells like smoke. Uncle trapped the Blaze Dragon in a bottle, and everyone rushed towards them to know if everyone was okay. The whole squad was now having a blast, and Uncle picked up Alicia and took off to the skies despite her endless complaints. He asked her to stop with the turning because her massive melons were causing disruption during the flight. He also carried the 2 guys, Edgar and Rhaegar. After this, Elf and Mabel ask Alicia why they call him Kuroki, and Alicia also asks why they call him Wolf Gunblood. He then tells them that those are the 2 names he goes by in this world. He tells them that his real name is Shibazaki Yusuke. Turns out these girls actually prefer those other ridiculous names to his own original ridiculous name. Anyway, Uncle tells Elf that he now realizes how to get back home, and all he has to do is to keep causing big energy surges like the one he did with the Blaze Dragon, and Elf wanted to destroy it just so Uncle would not be able to go back to his world. The fight was over. Uncle, Takafumi, and Fujimiya all head to eat ramen and then head home. Takafumi then reminisces on everything that has happened so far with Uncle in the past months, and he realizes it's actually been a blast. He sees later that evening that Uncle was apprehended again and thrown into prison. Just what did Uncle do to deserve this? Thanks for watching, fellow weebs. If you enjoyed this recap, dive into the next video or playlist. And don't forget to check out our cool anime hoodies in the description below. See you in the next recap.